They let you out with what you came in with, which is practically nothing. And that was it.
Society stigmatizes you. When you leave prison, they brand you, you're an ex-con. And there's nothing you can do to change that.
I was scared at first because I thought, oh wow, what if these people try to kill me? What if these people hold my crime against me?
The United States locks up 1 out of every 100 of its adults. With the highest incarceration rate in the world, its prisons are filled to overflowing.
We went from a prison rate of 196,000 in 1970 to a prison rate of 1.4 million in 2001. That is approximately a 700% increase.
Keeping people incarcerated for longer amounts of time is something we can't afford any longer. The national trend is that there are more prisoners being released from prison each year in excess of 650,000.
These people are someone's children. They're someone's mother. They're someone's neighbor. They're someone's sister, brother, aunt, uncle, someone's teacher.
Leaving prison is not easy.
It was hard, a lot harder than I thought it would be.
Some offenders say life on the outside is as hard or harder than doing prison time.
The choices that I made coming up were wrong, and this is where I ended up.
There have been so many times that I wanted to give up because it's so hard out here. And there have been so many times, realistically, I have said, oh, it was so much easier in prison because I could do this, they tell me to do this, I know what to do and I know what to do.
It's a long road back to get that respect back and to try to gain some trust and some understanding again.
They let you out with what you came in with, which is practically nothing. And that was it. So I had to find somewhere to live, which in turn I eventually went back to my parents. You have to get a job because you have to start paying on fines and costs. Just trying to be productive, something that you never do. Now you have the legal system on your back about it. If you don't, they're going to violate you, put you back in prison, and you'll have to do this all over again. It was very difficult. And I have felonies on my record, so getting a job was impossible. And not only that, trying to go back and try and deal with my family, go see my daughter, transportation was an issue, everything. Just felt like the whole world was against me and I was all alone, and I used and kept using. And I went back to the streets, to the same people, the same things, because that's all I knew how to do.
It's unrealistic to think that you're going to set somebody out on the street, that day one they're going to find a place to live, they're going to be able to care for their children, and they are going to be able to find employment.
Nearly 2/3 of those released won't make it. They'll be rearrested within 3 years.
I came out with nothing. I had no home, no financial funds, no skills that I could offer. I was caught into, I would say, the wheel, like a hamster, and running and going nowhere.
I have a felony, and a felony down here is a death sentence. It really is, especially when you're trying to turn over a new leaf. People say forget the past, but they walk around with picks and shovels to dig it up. I've had 1 million doors slammed in my face.
This is going to be a continual thing for the rest of my life, where that's going to be, basically, I'm still doing time, just in a different way.
Jamie's story begins early in her life.
That's my little girl. When I was born, my mother and father were having a lot of problems, and I don't know how exactly it came about, but my mom started going to a church, and there was 3 Mennonite ladies who said that they were always praying for a child to come into their home. Well, they invited my mother, and me out to live with them.
When she was 4 months old, Jamie and her mother moved to the sisters' small farm.
And she stayed with us for a while, but then she ended up, moving to different places.
Eventually, the 3 women with whom she was living petitioned the court to become her guardians.
The judge said, I've never done this before, but I'm going to give custody to 3 ladies. So he gave us custody.
Ruth, the younger sister, and Naomi, the older sister, and Elizabeth really formed the basis of support for her in her growing up years, and actually to the time that she was incarcerated.
We did everything any parent would do. Took her to ball games, gave her piano lessons. We did everything until she got to be about 11 or 12. And then it was downhill from there.
My parents still had visitation rights, so on the weekends I'd go visit them, and through the week I was with my guardians, and they were very, very strict Mennonites. So going back, I'd rebel because I was like, it's not fun here, I can't do anything, and I just started having problems.
She wanted to belong to a family with a mother and father.
I really wanted to live with my parents, but I knew I couldn't. But as a child, you really don't understand why.
We gave her all the love she could possibly take, but she didn't want our love.
I had a lot of built up anger and frustration and rage, and I just got to the point where I was so alone inside that I just inverted within myself, and I wouldn't open up to no one.
Jamie sought relief in drugs, alcohol, and a relationship with a young man recently released from prison whom she married. It was a volatile combination. By the time she was 18, she was charged with a felony and incarcerated.
I went to prison, and I was so young, and I was just so scared.
When Jamie went to prison, honestly, she was so hard.
I just lived like there was no tomorrow, because I feel like if I did all these crazy things, time would go faster. Maybe it would take away the pain. And I used it to medicate. I mean, it was basically like the adrenaline rush would medicate me.
With the incarceration of Jamie, we got interested in that as a ministry or an outreach, and a support for Elizabeth because she was going through a very difficult time with it.
The death of one of her guardians prompted Jamie to rethink her life.
When I got to a certain point where my one guardian that was like my mother, she passed away because I was on the phone with her when she died. It's like she had waited on me. I had promised her that I would see her again, and I knew that I had to get my life straight in order to see her again in heaven.
There were a group of us that formed a visitation team that would go in regular cycles to visit her. We also had a regular letter writing campaign going on to make her feel like that she was getting mail, because that's so important to people that are incarcerated.
When she was released at the age of 30, she decided to return home where only one of her 3 guardians remained.
I wanted her out of prison, but I just didn't think she and I could hit it off very good because I'm kind of bullheaded and so is she. And so we lock horns sometimes.
It's such a pressure getting out, and I don't have a job. I'm looking for these jobs, any job, and it's just like, yeah, you don't want to do certain things, but it doesn't even matter anymore. You're like at the point where you'll do anything. But, it's not easy now because nobody wants to hire a felon.
Jamie is on a job search. One of her first stops is a coffee shop. The owner discusses the job application process.
It doesn't ask about any kind of record. And it's totally up to you how you're going to do that when you get into an interview. But if they're not asking for it, it's up to you if you want to bring it up.
It's so hard right now because, I'm staying back with my guardian. I don't have anywhere to live as far as myself. I don't have any money. I don't have anything. There's nothing like having to depend on your family. You know, they're having to drive me around to find jobs. They're having to drive me here and there and everywhere. My whole goal when I got out was to give back to them, but they're still giving to me because I can't afford $500 a month for rent. I have no job, but I can't get a job because I have a felony. I was in prison. I can't get a job. Once I get my job, then I can move forward. But it's to that point where just getting the job is the hardest part.
Finally, her search gets results. Someone has called, offering her employment.
And I'm looking forward to it because it's full-time. It's probably from 9 to 3. And now she never asked me if I had a felony. So I'm really wondering if she does ask me, well, would that change anything?
A few days later, Jamie begins cleaning rooms in a residential motel. She is comfortable with the work since she learned cleaning skills while incarcerated.
They just got done doing a tile job, so what I'll be doing is, this is a room that has to be fully cleaned before another person can come in and rent out of it.
Trying to stretch her meager resources, she moved into an apartment with a young man.
I mean, right now, I'm in a situation, although I just moved and got a new apartment. My roommate just got a DUI, and I don't know what's going to happen to me because if he loses his apartment, obviously I'll lose mine since I'm renting from him.
She is also applying for a waitressing job at a nearby restaurant.
So right now, I mean, it's just like there's a lot of waitresses over there. Oops. So I'm not sure where I'm needed the most. See, after I paid my phone bill and my rent, I was broke again. I have like $7 to my name. I just really don't want my situation right now to change. So far, I mean, God hasn't let me down.
Jamie suffers from depression and other mental health problems that are controlled with medication. Without health insurance, she finds the drugs too expensive to purchase. But without medications, job stress soon becomes unbearable.
Would you like more water? I just felt like killing myself. I mean, I was just so depressed. And I just felt like everything, at my job, just with the people talking about me being in prison, just everything, it was just like everything hit me all at once, and I was just so sad, and I just cried myself to sleep. And I really thought I was gonna have to go to the hospital because one thing about it, I really don't want to hurt myself. I've come so far from that. But, my first instinct was just to run away. I just wanted to run anywhere and start over, but then it's like you can't start over because you have your criminal past that follows you, and so today I just basically gave up my job, and I loved that job, I thought I was good at it. I've been taking my medicine, but not normal like I should because I can't afford it. I have to pay my rent, I have to do all these different things, I have to buy my food. So, I really don't know what's going on right now. I don't know. Yeah, life's kind of crappy right now. It was all good until they found out I was locked up. And then that's why sometimes it's like I just wish I was back there because I didn't have to worry about rent. I didn't have to worry about my medication. I didn't have to worry about, how I was going to get to work because there, all you need is commissary money and everything's cheap. They give you 3 meals a day.
We provide them with what they need while they're in our custody, but once released, they become a member of a locality, a citizen of a locality, and those services and programs need to be provided by agencies within those localities for them to be successful.
Seafood Alfredo. And then what I'll do is turn this in.
Jamie has managed to get back onto a medication for her depression. She has just started a new job.
He saw how I worked, he saw how I worked with customers, and he was just like, if you like this kind of work, I can, hire you.
She has moved in with a new boyfriend whom she has known less than a month.
Busy here. Mix it together.
Put that on here too.
Look, it looks good.
You put this on? Yeah.
My boyfriend has really been a really positive interference in my life, and he talks to me a lot, and he's just like, he points out to me that even though people around me do things, that doesn't mean I have to become lower and do the same thing.
It's your birthday, or as they say in France,
Happy birthday!
I love you so much. Happy birthday, my love, Louise. I love you.
I was so depressed, and I used alcohol to numb the pain, and being with him, I've gotten this balance.
Her friend has suggested they move to Florida, where there may be better job opportunities.
The thing is that I want to be able to secure my own future. I want to pay all my debts here first. That's my number one goal, is to pay off my debts and to basically save money. And then we can make a step. But I'm not the type of person who is going to just go down to Florida, who doesn't have any kind of money saved or any kind of security there, no job, no nothing, and then have bills back here that I have to pay. That's not responsible. When I first got out, I was just trying to feel the freedom, because it's almost like it seemed unreal. And so I tried to live each day for what it was, but now it's I'm not living each day. I'm focusing on the future, as somebody really should. I have no credit because, of my being incarcerated. So I have to build my credit.
With plans of soon getting her own apartment, she decided to take out a small loan to buy furniture.
And so now I have to pay off a whole year a monthly payment. And that's something that I'm proud of myself for, because credit is what you need for your future. So that was, I'm trying to make decisions like that. I do have a problem with spending money, because I was locked up for so long and you could only buy certain things. And so when I see nice things, it's oh, I want this. And my boyfriend's be careful, we're on a budget.
Those leaving prison are encouraged to have a plan for re-entering their communities.
I didn't really have a plan, because I was just you know what, my main plan was I'm going to not hang around bad people. I'm not going to do drugs. I'm not going to do crazy stuff. And then I kind of just winged it, But what was really awesome for me is because I was the type of person when I was younger, and even in prison, I hated working. Because I really, especially in prison, where you got 23 cents an hour, that was horrible. So, but then in a way that helped me, because then I got out and I'm wow, $7 an hour. You're thinking 23 cents is nothing, but $7 is a lot. Imagine what I could buy in a week with $7 an hour, right? So that changed my perspective. It helped me appreciate the dollar, right? And I actually really enjoyed going to work. And that's something that I am so surprised, because all my life, I've always wanted somebody to take care of me.
Jamie's one constant is her guardian, Elizabeth.
We went to see her every month. Every month that she was in prison, I went to see her.
I really believe that deep down inside, at least Jamie's had a very nurturing relationship with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth has stood with her when other people have walked away.
Somebody that you really love and really care about, it's really hard.
All right, I got her.
Okay, come out. Over the years, yes, I've seen a lot of change. The reason you give these lambs a shot is because our land, the grass and earth is depleted of selenium. So this is selenium.
Okay. Is it in there? Owie, piercing their ears. Oh, honey.
All right, now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for helping me.
I have sheep blood all over me. You have to do that every time?
What?
The animals?
You got to get the... She's got it all over her face.
That to me was just terrible. I'm traumatized. I really am. I'll go home and cry. I feel really nauseous, but...
Now, more than a decade later, Jamie still lives with flashbacks to the crime that put her behind bars. The sight and smell of blood are potent triggers.
And like seeing it splashed all over my face, it was like the crime. And like when I was washing my face, that smell of blood just overwhelmed me, and it was just like, I just instantly felt sick.
Incarceration and the stigma it creates affects anyone released from prison. Klaus spent years employed in city government.
At the beginning, I was working basically in a bureaucratic position through a number of different departments. I was interviewed for a position as a coordinator for the Pan American Games. I got that job and then worked from that point forward with directly for the mayor's office. I did that for a couple of years, and then I connected with a partner, and he and I decided to open a bar in Seattle. And in the course of looking for some venture capital, I went back to some of the people who I'd met, strangely enough, through government. I put about $250,000 of my own money into that. And, well, to make a long story short, my partner took off with my part of the investment, and unfortunately with a significant amount of money from investors who, again, were associated with organized crime. I was being held responsible for what amounted to, well, close to $200,000. There were certainly some pretty clear threats against myself and my family. There was the offer of working it off by transporting money across the border, and then the suggestion that I should be carrying drugs instead. And there's a limit to moral latitude, and carrying drugs was about the limit. I was not going to do that. So I had to come up with the money to pay them back. I first liquidated everything I had that I could get my hands on. But given that I'd pretty well wiped out a lot of my savings to invest in the bar in the first place, that was fairly limited. I borrowed money from a number of people, and ultimately, I guess, found myself in the situation where there was no more money to be had, and I was still about $100,000 short, and time was running out. I guess in a final act of stupidity and desperation, I went out and over the course of about 6 weeks, I robbed many banks. The last bank I robbed, actually, I thought I'd finished paying off the debt. I got a phone call that morning saying I was still $10,000 short. And it was now just, I don't know, it didn't... It just seemed reasonable to go rob one more bank. Got caught in the process.
Klaus was sentenced to 8 years in prison.
I had several attempts on my life. I I witnessed things in prison that have given me nightmares, frankly. I saw guys killed. You get to the point, though, where you can live with that. It's very odd. It's an institutionalization process that just hardens you to that sort of thing. But the pain inside, the pain of thinking about your loved ones, the loneliness, the despair, that's the hard part. You're your own worst enemy behind bars. That's why the suicide rate in prison is extraordinarily high.
After serving his sentence at Stony Mountain, Klaus was released on parole.
Release is not an easy process. The first day I got back, I realized that the telephone in my house was broken.
Klaus went to the phone company to exchange it. A young man assisted him.
He came back with a new phone and walked over to his computer and says, "Well, what's your name?" I told him. And he sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, man, you must be having a rough time with that name. It's been in the news a lot." Then he asked for my phone number. And I gave it to him, and he punched it in and made the connection because the first name showed up the same. He realized that I was, in fact, the person in the news, and I was the notorious bank robber, had been released. His face went white. He physically took about 3 or 4 steps back from the counter and seemed unsure of what to do next. That reaction was fairly typical.
As part of re-entering society, Klaus needed to establish a bank account.
I had an appointment with an account manager, very nice young fellow. We went through, I gave him all my information. He was just thrilled. I was starting my own business. I, in fact, had a reasonably large retirement annuity still that I could bring over to him. So everything was great. Up until the time he asked for my social insurance number. He entered that into the computer, and quite literally a big red box appeared on his computer screen, flashing no less, that said, "Do not give this man a bank account. He is a suspected bank robber." He looked at the screen and said, "Well, gee, I wonder why it's saying that." And at that point, I had to say, "Well, because I robbed a number of banks." His response was, "Well, I guess that would do it, wouldn't it?" He stepped out of the office. He was gone for about an hour and a half. He finally came back and said, "Okay, we can do it." He'd actually gone to his bank manager and fought with her for the better part of an hour to get her to agree to give me an account. The toughest thing about re-entry, and it was for me, was finding employment. People don't like to hire ex-cons. They make the assumption that you're dishonest, that you're dangerous in many cases. I have a pretty solid post-secondary education, running around with a couple of degrees, and I couldn't get anyone to take my resume. They saw my name on a resume, they handed it back to me. I went out and started my own business instead, a consulting firm. I'd been volunteering with the Open Circle program, and through them I met Ken Penner. I met a few other people who ultimately provided me with some contract work that got my business kickstarted.
I had a call from a friend. He said one of the people, Klaus, had come out of jail and was looking for a job, having great difficulty finding a job if I would meet with him. So pragmatically, there was an opening. We needed somebody. In Klaus's case, he is a very good writer. Improving always our marketing materials is needed. Klaus was a good choice for that.
They say that when a man goes to prison, his whole family is locked up. And there's truth to that.
For the children that are left behind, the loved ones that are left behind, parents or husbands or significant others, their lives kind of go into a halt.
None of my family were aware of my criminal activity. They had no clue what was going on. When it broke, and the story started to emerge about the things I had been involved in, what I had done, my wife lost most of our friends. They disappeared. People who we'd known for, in some cases, decades, weren't returning calls, you know.
First they're angry, they're hurt, and they're suddenly saddled with responsibilities that they probably wouldn't normally have because now they're taking care of Sally's children because Sally went to jail.
Hate mail arrived on a regular basis for the first several months after my conviction. So how did it affect my family? I mean, it devastated them. Their lives were turned upside down. My children were ashamed. The man they thought they knew as a father, a provider, turned out in their minds for a while to be somebody else. I was a stranger. In many ways, it's like having your loved one die, because the person you thought you loved has disappeared. And now you're faced with this person who looks the same, but you don't look at them the same way anymore. And it's a long road back to get that respect back and to try to gain some trust and some understanding again.
A month after we last saw Jamie, she landed in the hospital. Severe abdominal pain forced her into the emergency room.
My stomach was hurting so bad. I had these really bad pains in my stomach, and I just could barely move. Like when she pressed down on my stomach, she was like, "You need to go to the emergency room. Something's wrong." I was just in so much pain, it was like I was almost delirious.
She received treatment for a severe infection, along with a bill. She has no health insurance.
Out of all these, I owe $3,447. So I have no idea how I'm going to pay these, because I've never even seen $3,000. That's just blows my mind. I just went to the hospital and they had me fill out a financial assistance program because I'm only working a part-time job and I only get work 3 days a week. I don't have any funds.
Eventually, Jamie and the hospital came to an agreement regarding her bill.
Do you accept the financial assistance program? I'm now a manager at a pizza place down in Bridgewater. I got my license, I've been driving. Right now I'm just saving money for a car. That's my main goal. I do have a new boyfriend. We've been together a few months, just, he's a really laid back person and everything's going good in my life,
Due to a change in management, Jamie and her boyfriend have both lost their jobs.
I had been putting in 47 hours each week at that job. I had trained every single employee that worked in the dining room. I feel devastated, I'm worried, I have a car payment, insurance, I have my furniture, I have my rent, I have, other bills, my telephone, my cable. I have everything with now no income. And I was making such good money that it's just an incredible feeling of loss, so much where I feel like I don't want to do anything when I wake up in the morning. I don't even want to be here sometimes because I went from so doing well to the pit bottom. I thought that because of my record, this was awesome opportunities, but there's always a price to pay working with people like this. They don't care about my background as a criminal, but then obviously they want more in the end. And I'm just at the point where, I just want to live a normal life without people trying to, use me or control me or, you know, abuse the situation. So.
Jamie's on a journey, she has been for a long time, to find out who she is and where she fits in.
And I think a lot of it is because I was in prison, and like it makes them not respect me. It makes them like look at me as a less of a person, or something's like I'm different from other people. And I always in my mind, like, I always think I'm less than because of my past. I don't know, I'm like really scared right now with everything, so.
Sustaining close relationships proves difficult for Jamie.
In relationships, I'm not used to not being with the person. Like, I'm used to, like, when I was in prison, the person I was with was right here all day by my side. Now I'm out here in the real world, and it's like, man, I see so much at jobs, and I know I go through so much at jobs where so much disrespect. I don't trust anybody anyways. And so when it's like, I don't want my boyfriend working in a different job. I want us to work together if we're gonna be together. That's just how it is. And I mean, that might sound crazy, but that's just how I feel right now. If he doesn't like that, then he can leave, you know? I've always been a jealous person, but it's like 10 times worse when I'm not on my medicine. Like, I know I'm like hell to live with. I know that, but I have to live with that too. Like, it's a terrible feeling. My boyfriend, he says to me that I'm like the most beautiful woman he's ever been with. In my mind, I'm like, how? I think everybody else is more beautiful because when you probably look inside of them, you don't see all that other stuff. Like, I've done things in my life where I'd never feel totally pure again, you know, like, and I've tried to pray, like, but I don't feel nothing anymore, you know? Like, I used to be able to feel God, not now.
I think a lot of times we write prisoners off as having no spiritual foundation or content, and that's not true. It's just that many of those are dealing with issues that you and I don't deal with.
I really don't have anybody, you know? I mean, I look at my mother, she's sick a lot, and my real father never calls. Never. Like, never. Didn't call for my birthday. I just don't care anymore with that. I feel like sometimes I have no one. I don't want to feel like that. I mean, sometimes I feel like prison was better than out here. You know?
The odds of a person released from prison never returning are not very good. There are too many things working against successful reentry into the community. Those who enter structured programs designed to assist an ex-offender readjusting to life on the outside have a better chance at success.
Society needs to focus on prisoner reentry and looking at the support systems that are needed by men and women as they leave institutions and supporting them upon their release. Folks that have been incarcerated for months, years, simply cannot come back into the community and expect to exist without those support systems in place. And society plays a big part of those support systems.
In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the Raise House assists women with the transition from prison to the community.
The Raise House is transitional living. They can live there for up to 18 months. We do an assessment on each woman as she comes in. We teach them appropriate behavior, what's important about recovery, what to do, what you need to know, who to talk to, who not to talk to, and once again, what your priorities should be in your recovery process.
I'm learning how to set healthy boundaries, not to let people step all over me or take advantage of me and things of that nature.
I'm just learning how to respect people for who they are and accept people for who they are and not what they are in the picture that I paint them to be.
I used to get things from a lot of men, and I used to think that I was using them, and I didn't actually realize and learn until we had that session that they were actually using me and trying to groom me and get things from me, you know, so I had it all backwards.
A lot of times when they go to prison, their children are taken.
You know, so I called the government in there to allow the government to come in and help me. And now that I'm going through a situation in my life with my children is that they're trying to take my children from me.
By the time I was about 29, my mother said she had enough. She took my children from me.
Right after New Year's, she was giving him a bath, and she ran the water, and she did check the temperature of the water, and she stuck my son in the water. And he screamed. She said he screamed so loud. She went to pull him back out the water, and like he suffered second and third degree burns to the tops and bottoms of both his feet, and he wasn't even a year old. So the following day, Children and Youth had issued a court order that when he's released from the hospital, that he's to be released to them. And at the same time, they had a court order showing up at my aunt's, and they got my son. And in the process of all that, my aunt went to my grandmother's and took my two oldest kids. And then she got to the point that she couldn't take care of them no more. And she allowed them to go into the system as well.
A lot of the women who come to us have limited job skills or limited education. There's not very much left once you have a minimum wage job and then you pay rent, child support, costs and fines, and you have to buy food. You have to buy personal hygiene products.
So it's a lot easier to go out and do something illegal than it is to get a job and work your way up the ladder when life is already against you and you're already 10 years behind where you should be.
Dennis Dunn serves on the board of the Orthodox Church Prison Ministry. He is a director of job development for the Atlanta Enterprise Center in Atlanta, Georgia.
And what we do is we help these folks realize what their situation is, how they got into it, help them get a realistic approach on their life. Self-sufficiency is the main goal for an individual.
In addition to that program, we have a substance abuse component where if individuals are having substance abuse issues, we will refer them to our program.
I go inside prisons and I teach classes to the inmates, what they need to know now before they get out. My background is industrial management and sales, and I tell them I was the one you sat across the desk from and interviewed for a job. And I tell them this is what an employer wants to hear from somebody who comes out of prison, so that when they interview for a job, they win.
The application itself screens you out by asking, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Even if mine is now 11 years old, it's still a major hurdle to me.
One of the things they come out with is unreal expectations about what they can do. They want to be truck drivers. Well, sure, you can get a CDL and a DOT card, but that doesn't necessarily mean a freight line is going to hire you. If you were busted for theft, grand theft auto, or fraud, chances are you're not going to get a job as a truck driver. If you have a lot of DUIs in your background, you're not going to get a job as a truck driver. If you have drugs in your background, you're not going to get a job in the medical field. So what we try to do is help them work in a more realistic job search so they're not spinning their wheels and wasting their time. We're brutally honest with them. We have to be.
I was coming out to nothing. I had no clothes. I had nothing.
After completing the Atlanta Enterprise Center's program, Yolanda, with the center's assistance, landed a job with an employer willing to take a chance on her.
They made it a lot easier for me. They gave me avenues. They told me what to do, what not to do, how to do this. Because I knew that I had the determination and the drive to get a job, but I didn't know how to get a job. I didn't know that I could go up to them and say, yes, I just was released from prison, but I'm not who I was. This is who I am. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could put it on a job application. I didn't know that I could say, well, yeah, my last experience was, in prison, and it's acceptable. Got a job application the first week on a Thursday, and I started work that next Thursday. I do customer service, I do production, and I also do graphics. My goal is to learn more about the graphics, the programs, because it was so limited in prison. And working there also gives me the opportunity to network. There's so many different people that come in there from every type of business, every place, council, school, everything. And I love my job. I really do. I don't love it enough to stay there forever because I want to do my own thing. I have 1,000 dreams.
In Virginia, a group of concerned churches founded Gemeinschaft Home. Here, in a 6-month program, men learn job as well as life skills in a residential setting.
And we're a small entity, a transitional therapeutic community, where we help men come out of prison and give them a hand up. We transition them slowly back into the community. Instead of $25 and what they have on their back, we send them out with skills, life skills, parenting skills, and things they would need to successfully transition instead of going back into the old criminal lifestyle.
And you're here to get you adapted back to society. And I think it's a great thing because, $25 versus what I can make here and actually get a good job, and find out who I am.
We use a holistic approach. Everybody here has a job, and everybody is responsible for the upkeep of the house. It's a large family, but we act like a normal family, living in a community with other families in the community.
You have to put it together, you got to put everybody, you have to know how to deal with him. They take you like a month before you start feeling comfortable, because it's like always, not everybody agree with what I say, not everybody agree with what you say, so that's a conflict. But as soon as we get together,
we have a good working relationship with employers.
I take care of myself.
They know that our guys are going to be to work every day because we're going to take them there and we're going to pick them up. They know that we have an employment coordinator that's going to communicate with them if it's any problem.
I've got supervisors, I've got maintenance men that have came through Gemeinschaft and are still employed here with Tyson Foods in various capacities, not just general labor, but like I said, in management support, maintenance, supervision. So, it's been a good program, for Tyson Foods.
The majority of our extra time that they have when they're not working, we're doing volunteer work.
$18.19. $18 bonus. The lady back in the back at the red top.
Statistics show that in the long run, taxpayers save money to have nonviolent offenders in community residential programs like this than to have them incarcerated behind bars.
The only thing you have is the way you live your life. And if you're going to find any sort of redemption out of the whole thing, you try to live as good a life as you can, be as good a person as you can. And part of that is helping others.
Man to man filled with shame inside.
You have to be determined to make it, to prove it to yourself that you can be a real citizen in society doing the right thing.
A little longer and watch me stand back up tall.
Prisons are full of people who have made a single mistake in their lives, and who, if they were let out tomorrow, would really represent no danger to society.
Chance to prove what I really am.
Why not teach the skills that people need in order to reduce recidivism instead of making prison an industrial complex and a revolving door?
It's still a mandate from Christ to go out and to visit those that are incarcerated, that are jailed, because they are isolated.
So stay a little longer, watch me stand back up tall. And we all rose from the dead, and every day we rise again with the tip of the candle's flame, turning pain back into grace. And all this time it was you who watched me fall. So stay a little longer, watch me stand back up tall.
The preceding program was a production of Odyssey Networks with Third Way Media.